all CEOs, me included, we don't actually know what we're doing.
They're all sharks, so all you got to do, though, is know shark behavior.
I don't think we've ever talked about this before, guys.
We can capture all of the wallet share.
First place you start is with the product.
That's just the first nut.
This is the Capital Stack.
Hey everybody, this is David Paul, the host of the Capital Stack podcast, where I talk to founders, operators, and investors. Today I am talking to Sergio Radovic, the CEO and founder of Dyper. Sergio is a lifelong technologist and has spent many years in a lot of great different startups and technology companies, both as the chief marketing officer and chief technical officer, as well as Chief Executive Officer. So with that, I'd like to introduce Sergio. Sergio, how are you?
Fabulous. Look at me now. All those great titles, and I'm in a business of slinging diapers.
Yeah. How did that happen? How did you become in the diaper business?
Well, at some point in your life, you decide to complicate your existence by having a few children, in my case, two little ones. And then you wheel a garbage can full of unspeakable to the curb. And if you ask yourself what happens to these things, you either decide to be fine with disposing of 20 grams of plastic or twice as much plastic as a bottle of Coke every time you change a diaper, which, by the way, is roughly 4,000 times before your child is potty trained, or you decide to do something about it. So I took the path less traveled, right? Let's do something about it.
So where did you find out that there's about the amount of plastic in this? I mean, do you just do a lot of research on this stuff? I mean, I just try.
Yeah, it's actually strange, David. It's well hidden, right? Diapers are one of those product categories. They sort of belong in a genre of fast-moving consumer goods, but they're very lightly regulated, meaning there's no particular requirement to disclose ingredients on them. So they have super nice names if you think about it. Lux, Huggies, Honest, Pampers. Why would they hurt anybody, right? I mean, they can't possibly, since they have such cool names. But the reality is, when you look at their ingredient lists, which eventually can dig up on manufacturers' websites, you see they're made from polyurethane, polypropylene. Those are the two primary ingredients. And then fuel-derived polyabsorbent that sits in the middle. And when I say all these things today, I sound like I know a lot about it. I mean, I didn't. It was just really apparent on a mission, right? But today I do. I do know that these things are pretty monstrous. And by some estimates, this is EPA's own data, the third largest contributor to landfill by solid mass. Think about it, there's only 5 million kids, so they're pretty monstrous.
Yeah, we have 3 kids and they're all in diapers, and it's a disaster. Like we eat through them. So Dyper's mission was to make a bamboo-based diaper.
I mean, to be honest, that was more of a side effect of the mission. The mission was to make a diaper that's more responsible, that doesn't have to end up in a landfill. So the focus was on end of life. But in order to make something that doesn't sit in a landfill for 500 plus years, which is the current best estimate, we had to make it from a plant. So the plant that we fell in love with is the bamboo plant. Since it's not a tree, it's a grass. It grows super fast. It requires no fertilizers. So it's a plant that, when properly harvested and properly processed, can be very neutral to the planet, unlike, let's say, a tree or cotton, which requires extraordinary amount of water to grow.
Yeah, and so the idea is that these diapers, they decompose, but you can't recycle the diapers; they still have to go in the trash, correct?
No, that's the cool part. They don't, even though, you're perfectly fine to throw them in the trash. As a matter of fact, even in the trash, they degrade faster. But we are very unique because part of our mission was this obsession with taking them from your home. I know it seems like an odd obsession, but I often joke and say we're the reverse DoorDash. They go in and we take care of what comes out. But hopefully not feeding your kids DoorDash. But we have a network in 21 cities. Of contracted drivers. So big metros like Phoenix, where we are, but Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, Austin, Seattle, and so on, where our drivers will come to your home on a set schedule and pick up those diapers that you've separated in a bag that we provide you. And then we would, in that case, compost them in our bi-coastal facilities. So we do provide a complete cradle-to-compost solution for those customers who hope to take advantage of it.
Oh, that's incredible. So you can really like quantify the impact of this product offering based on like carbon emissions, huh?
Absolutely. And we track every single number. We're a certified B Corp. And as being a certified B Corp, part of your commitment to sort of all three stakeholders, your shareholders, your employees, and the planet, we not only quantify it, but we consider a very important KPI. What's the amount of pounds or tons, right, of product that doesn't end up in landfill? What's our carbon neutral or carbon positive impact, which if we don't, we offset. And then obviously every time we do something and make a decision, the decision is driven by sort of long-term environmental impact. I'll give you a very, very interesting case. Literally this week, we're launching a North American first paper-based packaging for diapers at Walmart. It may seem trivial, who cares, right? They're packed in this or that. But the fact is that you're going to go through all the packaging as well, right? And if we can make packaging out of paper, which is actually engineering-wise very hard, as you can imagine, diapers are designed to absorb fluids, so you can't really pack them in something that doesn't act as a good barrier. But we've done it and done it at scale. So now you can take the pack that your diapers came in, and even if you don't do nothing else, right, you can put them in your recycled paper bin with your municipality. And we think that's small win, but a huge win, right?
Sure.
And that's how we've been sort of running the business, is a whole bunch of small wins, right, that eventually to sort of add up to a larger win.
And so Dyper is considered a challenger brand. And so what does that mean specifically in the direct-to-consumer, construct? And, how is that positioned to kind of like the rest of the giants that are owned by, the Procter & Gamble's, the J&J's, these big consumer, staple kind of companies?
Yeah, I mean, we're the very definition of challenger brand. And it's not just because you're small and nimble, which, there's a temporary advantage. At some point, you're going to get larger and less nimble, right? But the fact is that, at least in our industry, the two juggernauts that you mentioned, and in our case, it's Kimberly-Clark and Procter & Gamble, respectively, roughly control 80% of the market.
Wow.
It's absolutely extraordinary. And in that 80% of the market, roughly 70% is controlled by two retailers, namely Walmart and Target, right? So if you are going to challenge the status quo, you have to take the sort of the fight to those two, very, very respectable, heavily funded, P&G is the world's largest advertiser, right? There's not a superlative you can make that it's not going to describe their organization. Fantastic engineering, great reputation. So you're going to have to take the battle to them on some subject. In our case, it's sustainability, end of life. And then you have to convince retail partners who have been selling billions and billions of dollars of the other people's products to take a risk, right? Because if you're not in retail, you're a hobby, right? That's an unfortunate fact. Unlike, let's say a makeup line or even a food and bev line, right? You can probably do okay on Amazon and DTC. But in the diaper space, yes, people certainly buy it on Amazon, certainly buy it on DTC, but 70+% of purchases are made at those two retailers. And you have to learn it the hard way, right? Those diapering products are not hard to buy. They're non-perishable. They're packed correctly. It's easy to pick up on your trip to retail, or their own .com, growing .com presence, right? So you have a dual challenge. You're challenging the makers, but then also challenging the distributors to take a risk. And I've learned words, David, that I really didn't know what they meant in any possible way. How do you become accretive or margin accretive, right? Differentiating, yes, you think you have all the answers, but it boils down. You can't raise the price, because if you're at a higher price, you may be margin accretive, but you're not volume accretive, right? And if you lower the price, now you have a high velocity. Another word I learned in retail, but you're not generating absolute dollars that they need to support the shelf space. So you have all kinds of other considerations of the challenger brand. And in the meantime, you're supposed to also do better, which you are, right?
Right.
Which means, in addition, your expense structure is worse, right? Because you're using better materials and alike, right?
Yeah. So how do you think about that? Because, you're subscale, at least compared to, the giant juggernauts, and you're creating a product that has better materials. So when you did your analysis and you raised capital and you went to market, is there an assumption that you're hitting a segment of the market that's willing to pay more, right? In order to be
start, right?
Yes.
I mean, certainly it's where you start. The one unique advantage in our category, and again, maybe it's true to others. I just don't have an experience in other categories, so I'll make a statement that may not be, that's not entirely qualified, but. What's interesting about diapering is that there's 13,000 new customers every day. That's about the birth rate in the United States. And that birth rate has been relatively stable over the past 15, 20 years. Minor fluctuations here and there. But at the same time, you lose 13,000 customers each day, right? If that makes sense. There's the happiest day for most parents is, when they stop replacing diapers. And coincidentally, it's also the happiest day for the planet, right? So we're all for it, right? Just, stop, right? As soon as you can. Mm-hmm. But because you have new customers, you can really much easier capture emerging trends, right? So the trend that happened in the past 10 years toward more sustainable, more transparent sort of product purchasing, it's much easier to capture in my category, if that makes sense. So we've had, moms have voted 10, 15 years ago with their wallets and with their minds, right? That they want to buy something that, doesn't kill the planet, right? So when we come into market, we can capture not only early adopters, yes, the ones who pay more, but also folks who are on a margin and are willing to pay a slight premium for a much, much bigger gain. So I think there's uniqueness there that it's allowing us to faster capture the market. And that's why we won retail placements like Walmart, which is sort of the prize, right? And it's allowing us to convince even our retail partners to take a risk on us because the early data, we served almost 250,000 customers just in the first 3 years of our existence. We're up to 600,000 now. But, we can show the data from households that shows not only initial trial, but a very, very high repurchase rate. And that is the holy grail for retail partners, right? Yes, I can sell the product, I can discount, there's lots of things you can do to drive trial, but will you come back and ask for it by name, right? And that's something we're very, very, very good at. So, look, I started in the .com days, 30 years ago, so I'm not drawing a parallel, but, there is a bit of a land grab because you do want to grab this new consumer because this new consumer will spend on other products in your portfolio. And we have proven that as well by releasing wipes and baby wash and where you can blend your margin up, right? As long as you get them sort of accustomed to their sort of everyday consumptive product and get them to love you. And, if I'm proud of anything, I'm proud of many things here, but 4.9 star consumer rating, it's about as good as it gets, right? And that tells you not only what you're doing is right because you're a great capitalist enterprise, but you're also building a product, right, that consumers actually appreciate and love, right?
Yeah, the customers, reviews speak volumes. What was the transition like from going direct to consumer on the internet to retail?
Brutal, absolutely brutal. Brutal in the sense that, we had some really bright minds, working with us with 20 plus year retail experience. But in this category, there's a few challenging brands that came along, like the Honest Company and to an extent Hello Bello. Both seem like very, very capable and nice people, but I don't think they've transitioned as successfully in terms of margin protection, right? So. In a way, I guess we had them to look to, right? So we're
that was Jessica Alba's company, yeah.
Yeah. They've been around for a decade now, raised $1 billion, and if you have to turn a profit, this is not meant as a cynical, negative comment. Just to say it's hard, right? I'm sure they would have preferred the other way around, right? But so we're able to learn from them, not being the first ones in the field. And really create a channel strategy that capitalizes on the channel's unique strengths, right? So Walmart's strength for us is about driving very high velocity, right? And since Walmart doesn't have discounting capabilities, it's everyday low price. You really have to come in. You have to come with the right price, so you're done. Right? You can assist it, right? And then we protected our turf on Amazon, where we found much less sensitivity to price. Despite you would normally think, we thought it would be much more price sensitivity. We found the Amazon consumers value other things like reliability of delivery, speed of delivery, right? Returns, right? In a way that I guess benefits Amazon and benefits the consumer. So they're willing to pay a slightly higher premium there. So we created a 3-tier strategy that differentiates what we offer in D2C. Give a specific example. In our D2C, we offer lifetime returns and exchanges for our D2C customers, something that Walmart or Amazon is going to offer, right? So if that's important to you, you'll buy it in the middle of the pricing curve from us, right? And if you want it tomorrow, I can't compete with it. Next day or 2 deliveries, table stakes for them, but it's not for me, right? Even my distribution network, then I guess you pay a slightly more and get it for Amazon. And if you want to be quick and do it today, and you'll just walk to Walmart and actually pay the least amount, right? But it obviously is the nature of the particular channel.
Did you have to lower your Amazon prices when you went to Walmart because it has to be kind of like at parity?
Yeah, it gets tricky in terms of their own actions, in terms of price matching and the like. It's not a pretty situation, but we try to reserve certain SKUs for Amazon only. And we've been creating, some really strong bundles that Amazon customers seem to appreciate. So you can protect somewhat your price. But look, at the end of the day, price per unit is a pretty public information, right? So you will eventually have to get as close to parity as possible. But, my answer to that is, if you can't beat them, join them. You see what they do well and how Amazon can really drive trial in a way that's really extraordinary for us. And there's almost like a bottomless volume, right, of moms looking for diapers. So you may have to trade some margin, right? But your alternative is you will give that CAC to Zuck, right? So
right, no, exactly. You're paying one way or the other, right? So
I'm not trying to give you a better discounted product for you to try than to pay 2-3x the CAC to a social media platform, right?
Yeah. So, I guess what my question is, I see a lot of direct to consumer brands out there. I mean, probably a lot more nichier than a category of like diapers. And a lot of what I hear is let's drive traffic back to our own native website, our own native brand. Let's own that relationship with the customer. But in a case where diapers, where you do get this bottomless pit, right, of customers, it's better to just essentially play than try to, own that whole or augur that whole experience, right? So how do you think about owning your brand messaging, while selling through these partners?
I'm going to probably sound contrarian, but I think that's all thinking. The brand lives, really regardless of the distribution channel. We are big believers in the brand building exercise. Whether you've been to our website, or you bought a product at Walmart, or you've seen it on Amazon, there's a tremendous amount of work led by some fantastic in-house people to define and execute the brand blade, right? And for us, the brand blade is about being a kinder business, right? And being a kinder business, yes, it has a lot to do with pricing and market positioning, but it is also about being a B Corp. It's also about using responsible materials. It's also being genuinely positive toward your employees. It's about disclosing your environmental impact and so on and so forth. So when you start from there, you will adapt those brand blades to a particular channel, right? And then you don't worry as much if the customer, buys your product at Walmart or buys it from you, because they're going to get a subset of your brand blade that is applicable to that channel, right? And they'll get the rest of it because they will be curious and come to your website or see a PDP on Amazon and get the rest of the story. So yes, not every channel is easy to control your brand story, but if your brand narrative has a sharp blade, we do believe that the brand translates. This is a funny story. At one point in the company's history, where this is our 5th year, so it's not a long history, but halfway through, I wanted to kill our giraffe. Not physically, we have a giraffe, logotype, if you want. My thinking was, look, we're gonna, sort of go beyond sort of being just a childcare brand. Even it's very hard to name like diaper, but very few people buy a diaper toothpaste, right? But then the pushback for consumer across every channel was consistent, right? Saying no, right? I actually love that you have a hyper inclusive, right? Nondescript, gender neutral, wildly recognizable person, right? And we didn't even think about a giraffe as a person, right? We thought of it as a logotype, right?
Right.
And since then, we've named this person Frankie because we're pretty frank. And now this person has its own life with its own line of toys and the like. So it's a really good exercise because you don't realize the power of your brand until you try to take it away.
Mm-hmm.
And you go, no. I want to go in store and not have to look for you because I know the big giant yellow box. Or if I go scroll on a Facebook stream, right? Our biggest scroll stopper on Facebook, David, is our giraffe. It's I can put a tagline that says "My diaper cures cancer," and nobody's going to stop, right?
Right.
But I put my Frankie on a box in the middle of the stream. Consumers stop because they can recognize what it stands for. Right?
And that was a total accident, right?
Pure accident, completely pure accident. He was born because we wanted something, and and there he is now. Hopefully, he is adorable, but it wasn't by design, right?
You ever thought about going into older adults?
Yeah, I mean, it was when you write your business plan, and you probably interviewed a lot of founders. If I told you everything was my business plan, you would tell me I was crazy. There was we're going to take over the world, and we certainly still can. The market opportunity in baby diapers is just simply too large to
totally
in, right?
Right.
U.S. only sales. As you get bigger, we're encroaching on 100 million run rate. It gives you permission to exist, but it also gives you a tremendous amount of responsibility to execute on that scale. Innovation, even for us, is becoming slower and more CPG like. I jokingly, I'll give you a little secret. We're launching a new product on July 1st. That is I can't actually tell you what it is, but it's a very extraordinary product that took us almost 2 years of R&D and at-home testing. And these are terms we didn't know 5 years ago, right? Because you just do it, right? Because you have no responsibility of, $1 million business, right? And today, even for us, you have to worry about cannibalization and market acceptance and, legal liability and so on and so forth. Right?
So, I don't think I could think of a harder business than yours, especially from a guy that came from SaaS or, tech-enabled technology to go into something that has a real strong ESG engine / supply chain / omni-channel / direct to consumer. I mean, you truly are a masochist, sir.
You are not wrong. As you mentioned in your intro, this is my 13th startup, my first physical goods startup, right? And then not only I'm not just making one physical good, I'm making it across territories with a supply chain that's in 6 countries. And I'm selling it to some of the hardest negotiators on the planet, right? In terms of retail.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
And I was also, raising capital in the midst of COVID. Funny story there. I'm sure you heard it from others, but, when I raised money last time, we raised almost $40 million in that round, combined with investors I've never met in person, right? And just that by itself is a new paradigm, right? I mean, it's, you're raising money off of Dropbox documents and 1,000 by 1,000 pixel Zoom streams, right? And it changes everything, and it's in a way it makes it faster, right? To wait for a 2-3 week meeting, right, to move to our next step, right? On the other hand, it makes it faster, right? I can't tell you how many no's I've gotten, David. I think the count was over 100, right? For the same reasons you mentioned, right? Hard no's, meaning no's that people thought about it, mostly because of my prior experience.
Sure.
About me and the business, sort of generally, but then they go, but Walmart, but supply chain, and Chinese containers, and
margins, yeah,
margin. Yeah. Let's not do this. Come next time.
Yeah.
Next call. We'll
yeah, right. Advertise. Yeah. How hard did you get hit with the privacy issues with Apple and Facebook? Because I know that was a huge channel for you.
It was. It was for a while our we would say almost only channel. Let's say 80% of our spend was directed toward the Facebook Meta platforms. It hit us hard for the first month or two, just because it takes a little bit of learning from on your end, not so much on their end, to figure out how to properly attribute and measure your sort of conversions. So you may now not get some of the same direct signals that you used to get, and things are actually getting better, despite what some media will tell you. But you just have to refocus kind of how you buy media and what are some of the attribution mechanisms that you use. the other thing that's interesting to us, like I mentioned, our product doesn't have a wide appeal, right? Very few people. I joke, if I was giving samples at a mall, right, it will be a 90% plus targeted sample program, right? Because unless you're like an absolute weirdo, you're not going to pick up a diaper, right? There's no purpose to you, right?
No.
So the self-selection helps first-party signals like ours work so much better, right? So if you do eventually click on that ad and I have a first-party, pixel, server-side pixel, I will be able to carry that across channels because you are an interested sort of highly targeted party. And a few things we've done early on, like our partnership with Babylist, which is a fabulous company. It's the largest baby retailer because they focus on families who build baby lists before the babies are born. That's a hugely valuable signal to me. Right? If you add my product to your baby list for your rich uncle to buy, that's a gold signal to me, right? Even if I don't quite do it today, right, I will have opportunity to sort of data like off of it. And I would say one more thing that we did, which is I think pretty extraordinary early on, is we invested in data enhancement. It's part of my personal background. I've been in the data business in a few startups. So every single record that comes to us, whether it's anonymous or post-purchase, abandoned cart, runs through a full data enhancement, privacy compliant for sure, that we use internally to model our behavior clusters, right? So when we go to a retail partner, we can say with confidence, hey, our customer has this belief system, has these stores they purchase in, this media they consume. This is sort of the usual household incomes, presence of children. And it really helps us then find more lookalike customers. They may not seem obvious today, right? I'll give one specific example. One of our top targeting categories is people who buy a little bit sort of fancy kids' clothes, right? So it's not a signal about, you have a child, but it's a signal tells about income, propensity, right? Kind of where you want to spend your money, right? And we target that signal pretty strongly versus maybe more traditionally, hey, anybody who has a child under 3, that's a $2 market, even for Facebook to find good conversions.
Yeah, selling to a retailer almost kind of sounds like selling for an investment like partner. You know what I mean? You have to bring a ton of data, you have to spin the story, right? And you have to try to find that kind of that market fit, right?
Yeah, but imagine, it's good. Imagine if every single day there was, 100 new VCs, right? And 90 of them are brand new. They've never had a child, it was always their first investment. Even as an entrepreneur, it's very hard to get first-time funds.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
So because you don't quite know what's going to, how do you tailor your story to them, right? That's actually a good comparison. So I've spoken to, probably 500 funds in my career, and, I wish I could pre-qualify. If it's their first fund, I'm not pitching it. So it's a hard one, right?
Yeah. And so speaking of the capital stack, you were able to find an investor that specialized in direct to consumer challenger brands, the Craftery. I mean, I couldn't imagine there being a ton of those out there, right? The ones that had that kind of specialty.
No, surprisingly, there's a tremendous amount of private equity firms, right? Once you accomplish a certain scale, in our business, 100 million for some reason. Oddly, actually, whatever scale you're in, that's not the one they want. Just kidding. If you're 20 million,
you're about a quarter off, right?
Yeah, about a quarter. But let's say 100 has been mostly quoted as being it scale, right? But 100 million and let's say a 0 to plus 10 will be in a perfect world. EBITDA, you're a great candidate for a lot of capital sources. What Craftery has, in addition to just being extraordinarily knowledgeable in the CPG space. They have a focus on being more of a permanent source of capital. So they can come in earlier on, right? Because they don't have a specific 5-year horizon that, because maybe longer, right? If you come in earlier, right? And there are, I think there'll be more funds like that who have the strategic focus. For us, I would say if there are capital readers or capital listeners, I think a majority of the listeners, I would say the biggest claim of fame, truly the biggest, out of the absolute amount of capital, a lot of people raised a lot of money, is we don't have a single share of preferred stock.
Interesting. Okay. Wow.
I think that's a newsworthy item, right?
Yeah.
We are all common, and that's not the easy thing to negotiate as a founder or as especially for subsequent investments, right? But once you kind of explain to your investors why it needs to stay that way, I think it's going to start to make more and more sense in the future. If it's very hard to align your management interests, right? So once then your investors say, show me the depth of your bench, right? I want to see these amazing people on your bench, right? But let's give them an option to sit behind 7 letters of my capital, right? And it's a hard one. The more experienced your management team is, the more sophisticated they are in doing their own math, right? And saying, if I want to give up $1 million W-2 at XYZ CPG to join you, right? I also want to know that what I'm trading for, this options and the future upside, is realizable in some amount of time. So I was really able to turn the story of building a management team as one of the major reasons to not have a preferred structure, right? And which is why today we have a head of innovation she spent 20 years at a major competitor. My head of sales, 25 years, a global head of sales for a top 3 CPG. There's an example, right? So they didn't come here for cash. I didn't have it, right? They came here because their stock actually has meaningful capacity to appreciate.
And I think I was listening to a podcast recently with one of the partners at Bessemer, and I think that they are a firm that is definitely open to more common structures, as long as they would much rather have ownership and a more palatable share price than preferences. Just because it's kind of like there's an upside there's upside and then there's like a no side, right? Like these things can go down pretty quickly if management's not incentivized correctly. And as long as things are priced fairly, generally you see those types of wonky type preferred structures once valuations start to become kind of untenable, right? But if everyone's interests are aligned and like things are priced fairly, I think that that's a really great way to align incentive.
No, I agree. Certainly, if we were pricing preferred, we would have, on paper, been more valuable across the rounds, right? Because
future value, all that stuff. Yeah.
Whereas, certainly, we've given up a lot of ownership today. On the other hand, as I said, it does align us correctly. So when we have our board meetings, it's really never about the price per share. It hasn't been about price per share in the past 5 years. It's actually always been about, for us at least, about brand building. And how do we build an enduring American brand? It's a statement I keep repeating to all my team members, right? We're an American brand, which is, I think, something that this country is known for, right? But how do you build an enduring brand, right? And that takes, 10, 20, 30 years, right? And a lot of capital, right? And that cannot be by buying ads on Meta, right? It simply is not, right?
No.
So your horizon has to be longer, right? Your losses, if you want, right, have to account for the fact that a lot of that is going toward brand building. So again, on a specific example, every quarter we measure our brand perception in the market, right, using third-party paneling firms. Very few startups do that in a growth stage, right? You say, well, I did the sale, right? I did my duty.
Right.
For us, that is a metric, but not the metric that carries any higher weight than share of voice, than brand recognition. These are very important things, right? And where we sit today, obviously there's lots of space to go. We're not quite the household name as Pampers, but we're also not, a person who just bought an ad on Facebook.
Right. So where do you see the puck going in the direct-to-consumer construct? There's just been so much noise around Web 2 and data. Do you feel like it's a lot more noise than signal, or do you feel like there's a big, resurgence of change that is bound to happen on the company side?
I think the moment we stop referring to it as a D2C company, we'll get a better answer to that, right? It is a wickedly fast channel to experience, customer perception, right? But it's not a channel that can exist by itself for, I think, majority of the brands, right? So I think that if you focus on that as a business plan, and maybe things will change. Maybe with another TikTok to make things all better all of a sudden, and then you have another 2-3 year run, right? But the fact is that you're not changing a very basic issue for consumers, right? You're changing a place where they buy it, but the motivation to buy is always the same, right? You either have affinity for the brand because of the belief system or because, right, the promises, whatever theory you're subscribing, you're hiring the product to do a job, right? Is one of them, right? But in a way, you are, right? You need the product to do a job and do it fairly for you. If DTC delivers the product to you faster, initially cheaper, so be it. But at the end of the round, it's not a truly sustainable because we talked about this earlier. Whoever you're competing with generally has larger scale, right? Better sourcing, better engineering, right? So it's pretty hard to do. So unlike mine and your background of software, right, where you can continue outsmarting them, and it's sometimes enough, right? It's wickedly hard to outsmart very large CPGs because they actually have a lot of smart people, right?
Yeah, believe it or not. Yeah, they're not this big monoliths.
MBAs and patents and R&D and supply chain considerations alike, right? I'm not a secret like a CPG file, but it is extraordinary. You're competing with companies who, in one of our examples, is 5,000 people in R&D, right? Not all 5,000 are incapable of creative thought, right? So it's something you have to. I think the moment you acknowledge that, then you treat a D2C as fail fast channel, right? Great for getting customer feedback, the market proof, whatever terminology you want to use, right? But then you go, well, how does it then go into households? How do Americans relate to this at a larger scale? And that's without Amazon strategy. Now you have to have an Amazon strategy, right? I mean, it's a whole other exercise, right? And you have to have obviously a retail strategy. There's been an extraordinary shift again, right? Post-COVID, right? Where the powers move, right? Maybe D2C for a while. Now it's all swung to retail, right?
Right.
But that's again temporary, right? It's going to keep going back and forth. And I think if you average over 10, 15 years, it's probably about the same balance, right? Just depends on sort of timing.
Is there like a hybrid of, I guess, online shopping through retail, like the Instacarts? Like, I don't remember the last time I've been into a big box grocer, and I don't know if that's just my market might be smaller, but do you see a lot of people going away from retail, or not going away from retail, but going away from the in-store type purchases versus ordering online through a Instacart or whatever Target's company is?
2 years ago, and we're talking even before COVID, I would have said yes, just from my, again, similar personal observation. But we're terrible samples, right? You and I are actually terrible samples, right?
Totally.
But I would have said sort of innocently, yes, there's a shift away in GoPuffs, and so everything's going to be tomorrow, and you're not going to have to ever get out of your house. And then COVID happened, and nobody was getting out of their house, and everything was getting delivered. But then we just basically fed the distribution engine with fat profits, and then we didn't want to do that anymore. And then now we're saying, well, no, I kind of want to leave the house, and
right.
There's a relatively big swing to actually physically go to retail. What I think is extraordinary as an observant, not participant, well, I guess participant indirectly, but is how well the companies like Walmart are executing against Amazon's advantage in home delivery. And hopefully they're not listening. I wasn't a Walmart shopper, right? Even though they're a great partner of ours. Maybe it was like self-selection. Maybe it's, I don't know. I just didn't really feel like that I belonged to that store, right? And I still haven't been to more than a few stores just to see my own product. But both my wife and I become very loyal Walmart Plus shoppers because their same-day delivery capability, which is their own drivers, 250,000 drivers, their eco-focus on it, paper packaging, obviously no hassle returns and the like, has changed our attitude. And then, they cut a deal with Amex to be included with Amex Platinum. Think about affiliation, right? Almost illogical, right? Yeah. And here we are, right? We're their dream customer who would have never shopped at Walmart, who's a platinum card holder, right? And now we're burning our money at Walmart versus doing it at Amazon, right? So I think that's extraordinary move is can these retailers? And I just learned something, so I'll spew it without fact checking it. But there's been only $8 billion brands launched in the past 20 years by a CPG, right? So meaning the big brands are very hard to come by. That's $1 billion in sales, right? During those same 20 years, Target has launched $16 billion brands.
Whoa.
And you know some of them like Method and alike, right?
Like internal brands.
Internal brands, right? So it shows you that when you have a right strategy, you can execute correctly and you understand your customer, right? The brands can come from very unusual places, right?
Totally.
It's something really was an eye-opening statistic for me, right?
That is incredible.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, you're talking about just, smart people and legacy clunky companies. I mean, Walmart's been very innovative over the last, decades around healthcare, around clinical trials, around like all these different types of, applications of retail health. I mean, it's incredible.
I mean, you heard the rumor, not to, Walmart is public, but, it was in the press about, Walmart potentially buying TikTok, if the TikTok gets sort of forced to spin out. And that was a serious article. And I thought about it for a second. I said, look, it's brilliant, right? I mean,
totally.
There's so many reasons for them to also own a fastest growing, young generation, social platform. Not social. It's really, it's different. It's a different beast, right? And that's the company that
it's a media company, really. It's a user generated media company.
So
perfect for product placements. Cool. Sergio, thank you so much for jumping on. I really appreciate it. A couple canned questions. What is your favorite book?
That's a tough one. I like historical anomalies. So good one is, your audience is going to hate it, Hitler's Pope. It's a great book about the connection between the Nazi regime and the Catholic Church. It's a riveting read, right? So it's
cool. Well, no, you'd be surprised. My audience loves Nazis, so.
Great. Terrible.
I don't know. Actually, I don't do any market research on who listens. I mean, we might be speaking into a vacuum. So, second is, what is the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
Plan D. People talk about Plan B and Plan C. Plan D, right? I mean, if you're in doubt, remind yourself of 3 letters, SVB, right? So whatever plan you had, there's a Plan D, right?
Totally. There's a great quote I got from another founder. It says, your job as a founder is to get to Plan A to the plan that works without running out of money, right? Whatever letter that is. And there's always a move, as Ben Horowitz would say.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much, Sergio. Again, everyone, thank you for turning into the Capital Stack. We drop an episode every Tuesday. If you like it, please share it, please subscribe, and go to your nearest Walmart and get a pack of diapers. Do something well for the community. All right, everyone, thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Capital Stack Podcast. Make sure to share this with someone you know that can benefit from this content. Remember to support this show by rating, reviewing, and subscribing. David Paul is the founder and general partner at DWP Capital. All opinions expressed by David and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of DWP Capital. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for decisions. David and guests may maintain positions in the securities discussed on this podcast.